We're talking about characteristics of life, and one of the characteristics of life is that living things are dependent on other living things. Our first unit, when we finish the introduction, is going to be ecology, and we'll look at this unit then. So ecology is the study of the interactions of organisms with one another and with their environment. So for example, the bee depends on flowers so that it can get nectar to feed itself and to feed its colony, and the flowers depend on the bee or other insects to move pollen from one flower to another flower so that they can reproduce. So an example is insects and flowers. Insects depend, I should say, on flowers. Flowers depend on insects. Changes in the population of one affect the other, and that's called coevolution. All organisms need substances such as nutrients, water, and gases from the environment. And the stability of the environment depends on the healthy functioning of organisms in that environment. And so if you have even one link in the chain messed up, then it can mess up the whole ecosystem. The next characteristic of life is that living things use energy. So that would not be true of a rock, but it would be true of you, and it's true of bacteria. Living things require energy to maintain their molecular and cellular organization and to grow and reproduce and do all the things that living things do, like listen to their teacher on YouTube. Where do all living things on the planet get their energy? Put the following organisms in some kind of flow chart which shows the flow of energy from one organism to another and tell where the energy comes from originally. So we've got a caterpillar, grass, deer, robin, coyote, oak tree, hawk, rabbit, squirrel, and worm. Okay, so all of the energy in the ecosystem comes from the sun. So that's the most important thing to remember with this stuff. There are some ecosystems, tiny ecosystems that are based on a different energy source, like hot vents in the ocean floor, but the vast majority of them on the planet are dependent on the sun. So the sun's energy comes to the earth, and things like the grass capture it. So grass are called producers. So that takes care of that. The sun is also taken up by another producer, the oak tree. So those are both producers. Let's see, is there anybody else? That's it. Let's see. So a caterpillar might eat the oak tree. So the energy is and the nutrients are going toward the caterpillar. So that's why we're drawing an arrow that way. So we've got the caterpillar taken up. The grass would be eaten by the deer. Let's see. The oak tree makes acorns, which the squirrel is going to eat. So we've got the deer taken care of. We've got the squirrel taken care of. Let's see. The caterpillar will be eaten by the robin. And let's see, the grass, I have to go back to this one. The grass will be eaten by a rabbit. And let's see, the hawk might eat the rabbit. And let's see, the coyote might eat the squirrel. Or a coyote might eat a robin, I guess, if it could catch it. And so then we have a worm that's going to eat all these things once they die. So it can eat the rabbit and the squirrel and the hawk, all these different things once they all die, and the oak tree when it dies, etc., etc. So that's a pretty messy food web, but that's the way food webs look. Energy on Earth comes from the sun, either directly or indirectly. Meaning directly if you are a plant and you're doing photosynthesis, indirectly if you eat a plant or eat an animal that ate a plant or eat an animal that ate an animal that ate an animal that ate a plant. So this is almost all of the energy on the earth. In all ecosystems, there are, like I mentioned, just a couple of ecosystem types that don't have the sun as their source of energy, but those are very rare. Photosynthesis is the process by which some organisms capture the energy from the sun and transmit it into chemical energy that can be used by living things. So here's an equation that you'll need to memorize. If you are a plant, then you can make glucose or sugar, C6H12O6. You get your carbon from carbon dioxide. You get your hydrogen from water and your oxygen. Here's your oxygens, and then you make some extra oxygen right here. Here's the light energy. It can either be sunshine or it can be from your light bulb. So that's photosynthesis. Autotroph. Auto means that you do it yourself. And so automatic transmission is a car that sort of runs itself. It doesn't have to, sort of anyway, doesn't have to shift gears. Autopilot is when the plane is flying itself. An autotroph is a plant or some type of organism that can make its own food. So we're usually thinking of plants or algae or cyanobacteria. Certain protists can do this too. So organisms that make their own food are called autotrophs. If you add the word photo in front of that, like a photograph, think light. A photoautotroph uses sunshine or some type of light, solar energy. They do photosynthesis to get energy. So they convert water and carbon dioxide and sunlight into glucose and oxygen. There are other types of autotrophs called chemoautotrophs, and we'll do a unit on them later. They are a tiny side note, chemo, and then you will use the word autotroph as opposed to photoautotroph. Chemoautotroph, all one word. And so this would be not a plant. A plant would be a photoautotroph. So a chemoautotroph would be one that lives maybe off of sulfate or a hot vent in the ocean. So we'll look at those later. Oops, look, I have it here. Chemoautotrophs use different chemical processes to get energy, but they don't break down organic molecules. That would be a heterotroph. So here's a heterotroph. These are organisms that must take in food to meet their energy needs, and they're called heterotrophs. This can be an organism that eats plants, it can be an organism that eats animals, or it can be an organism that's a decomposer, like a mushroom or certain bacteria that will just break down something that was once alive. So these are heterotrophs because they're eating plants. This is a heterotroph because it's eating an animal. Heterotrophs eat and then break down the complex chemicals in food for their energy needs, or they reassemble the chemicals into structures that they need. Use this word kind of loosely here. Heterotrophs, there are some that absorb nutrients, like fungi, for example, the decomposers, as opposed to actually eating them. So there are a few types of heterotrophs that I want you to know. Actually, there's more than this, but you should learn these at least. Herbivores eat autotrophs. That means they eat plants. So in this picture, the rabbits would be the herbivores. A carnivore eats other heterotrophs. So in this picture, the fox is eating an animal, so that's a carnivore. An omnivore eats autotrophs or other heterotrophs. So a bear might be an example of an omnivore. It will eat honey, which is an autotroph, and it will eat whatever it can get its hands on, a rabbit, fish, whatever, so that makes it something that eats heterotrophs. So an omnivore is both an herbivore and a carnivore together. Metabolism is all of the chemical reactions that occur in a living thing, and so that's two things. Catabolic means to break down. So these are chemical reactions that break down molecules. So when you're digesting food, that's a catabolic reaction. Anabolic reaction, think anabolic steroids that build muscles. So anabolic reactions are chemical reactions that build molecules. So photosynthesis is putting together carbon dioxide and water. Anytime you're growing, healing, you're building muscle, building skin. Those are anabolic reactions.